Hi everybody, welcome back for another video. In this video we're going to be talking about crime and safety in New York City. New York City is the city that never sleeps. It really is a bustling metropolis with over 8 million people. And I went on a recent visit and it was interesting and I learned a lot. I want to take a closer look at crime trends in New York City, talk about some of the safety measures they have in place, and how you can be safe when you travel to a big city. I know going to big cities is always a lot to learn, and there's a learning curve. We went around to a lot of places which are safe, and you'll see as we scroll through, you'll see some sites like the Guggenheim Museum, the Met, various tourist attractions which are relatively safe. But in recent years, the amount of policing has decreased. There are less cops, you're less safe on the subways. There are a lot of crimes that are happening. There are people who are mentally ill who are out there. Vigilante justice happens when there's a vacuum in the policing. If the police step back, people have to step up and take care of themselves, and that's happening these days. Various policing strategies that have been put in place over the years that have really helped to reduce crime, and these need to be continued. These include stop and frisk, a broken windows policing policy, and these were controversial, but at the same time they have actually significantly reduced crime rates. And there are additional problems such as gang violence, counterterrorism, and a lot of other things. We don't have to dress up in armor as like this armor and arms exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum. But we do need to be careful when we go out and about, and we can take our less lethal weapons with us. In New York, you are allowed to take pepper spray. That's something that a lot of people may not realize. It's not easy at all to carry a firearm. It's not even worth the trouble because there are so few places that you can take it. No, you can't take swords. No, you can't take knives, but you can take pepper spray, and you just have to be wise and be careful where you go. There are some really safe areas like Staten Island, Upper East Side. That's where we spent most of our time in the Upper East Side. This is an area where there's a lot of high-end real estate and crime rates are low, and we felt very safe out and about in general the whole time we're there. There are some well-known least safe areas such as South Bronx, such as areas in Queens and Harlem, and other places that people recognize as having some of the higher and more violent crime rates in the country. But we went, and our daughter works in New York City now. Mango is in New York City, so we went to visit them. Spent a lot of time here at the Metropolitan Museum. A lot of antique, not of an antique. These are old guns back from when they were originally a new thing, early firearms. There are things here such as air cannons and matchlock muskets. These are from back in the 16th and 17th century, and they represent one of the really critical turning points in the history of firearms technology. They have a variety of flintlock firearms, which are just very unique. These were developed in the 18th century, and they're even used widely even into the 19th century. And they use a flint to create a spark, which ignited the gunpowder in the barrel and then propelled the bullet forward. It's very different from our current firearms that we use today. A lot of pistols, really long guns with really long barrels, including rifles and shotguns. And these were used primarily for hunting or military purposes. And they're also often highly decorated with intricate engraving or inlaid with precious metals and materials, and they're just very beautiful. And you'll see these are really some of the most beautiful knives, swords, and firearms that you'll see. And a lot of these are back from even some examples up until about World War I, World War II. So you'll start to see some more sophisticated weapons. But a lot of these long swords are really popular. This collection of firearms at the Met is really a fascinating window into the history of weaponry and military technology, and it provides a unique way in which firearms, shows how they evolved over time, which is also very informative. And the arms exhibit is broken up into European armor, Asian arms and armor, Middle Eastern, American, and then a variety of firearms, as you can see here. different countries. The Japanese armor that we were showing at the beginning has this like a cloth pattern on the outside to make it sort of look like it's soft, but it was extremely durable, covering the entire body. I think to me the Japanese armor was probably the most impressive. But some of these firearms, these things really go back, and these are just the kind of weapons that I imagine they were reliable to a point, but these are sort of the first generation, and they fired, but getting the next shot off may not have been so quick. These are definitely not user friendly like we're used to, but look at the attention to detail and the craftsmanship and the way that these were designed. Now here's some crossbows that also have probably a lot of historic potential as well, and some of the arrows that are used in various shapes. Overall, it's a very interesting exhibit. And as you can see here is the full get-up on the horse, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with this, but look at the guy's ankle. They have the spike on the back of the ankle that they fit into their uniform. They have, head-to-toe armor. You can imagine in the day just how difficult it would have been to fight someone like this. If the military was dressed like this, and you were a civilian and you didn't have access to the armor, you might as well give up, because there is no way you're gonna have a chance. And it's just really interesting to see how things have changed over time from back in the day they would have probably said, well, they're too militarized, this equipment's not necessary. Well, this is the equipment that won wars, and this is the equipment that got us to where we are today. All right, folks, now switching gears. I'm actually on the top of the L'Oreal building in Hudson Yards. It's a little bit on the west side of Manhattan at Midtown. We're sort of parallel with the Empire State Building. You're looking south down toward Lower Manhattan, and the Statue of Liberty is down in there. You probably can't see it here, but that's where I'm standing, and I'm looking, and I'm just basically getting ready. We're gonna go on a walking tour. We're gonna walk from here to the 9/11 Memorial. It's about 3.5 miles or 5.6 kilometers down there. Great views here in Midtown, 360 degrees. There's a thing called the Edge. You can go up there and stand, which we did not go because we were already up high enough. And we were basically at our daughter's place of business, and we're able to actually look around and go for a free tour up on the top floor, and it was really nice. So we're going to walk, and we're going to go down to the memorial, and I think it's just informative to check out the area of New York that you probably don't ever see. There's an area right between here and downtown that is a path, and you can see it right there just in your right hand side. There's a green area just running right down in between a bunch of buildings. Well, that is a path that we're going to walk through, and we're going to go all the way down once we finish with the observatory here. It was you could go at a walking speed, and there was no stoplights. You didn't have to worry about traffic. A lot of people were just pedestrians walking along. But there's great views up here. You can see the World Trade Center tower in the far distance. It's by far the tallest building in Lower Manhattan. You can see here on the right side is the Empire State Building and Madison Square Garden. We hung around this area a little bit before we went on our long walk. These are the kind of days when you go on these kind of trips, it's not unusual for us to walk 6-7 miles or more. It could be more in a day. So you have to sort of work up to it. If you're not someone that's usually walking a lot, start out a little slower, and each day you'll get a little better. So here we are. This is Hudson Yards. The very nice area in Hudson Yards. A lot of commercial businesses there, and there's some art. And as we walk down, we're going through an area called Chelsea, and it's also an area that is really very popular residential area. There's a lot of very expensive housing there. We're talking studio apartments that cost you $2 million to buy. So we're talking about just big enough to have a tiny little kitchen and a room with a bed, and that's it. About the size, smaller than your typical hotel room. So, this is a very expensive area to live, but, it's a nice area. There's this walking path, and we felt safe. I do believe that if you go into certain areas of town and you know where to go, you can stay away from a lot of the crime. Now, obviously, there are other parts of town where it's less safe and it's a lot cheaper to live. And so, the amount of money that you have to spend on housing certainly makes a difference. So here we're walking, my wife's out in front. You can see the World Trade Center tower, it's getting closer and closer, but yeah, it's a 3.5 mile walk. We went through some neighborhoods that were not necessarily the best, but from what I've read, the area in general, from Chelsea to Lower Manhattan, is really not that unsafe. It's still relatively well policed. We've been walking ever since we left about Midtown in the area around the Empire State Building. We've been walking toward the World Trade Center. This is the guiding light. Yeah, we were in Hudson Yards, but we could see that we were like parallel with the Empire State Building in Midtown. We've been walking toward the World Trade Center, essentially the reverse walk from what happened with a lot of people on 9/11. All right, getting closer. Why is it so windy in New York? So we finally made it. This is at the very base of the new World Trade Center. It's a really tall building. It's really hard to get all in one shot. If you're trying to take a picture, you really have to be creative. I was able to get it all the way up, but yes, this is a tall building. Beautiful location down all around here. Not many people on that side of the building, but we come around to the memorial. And I'm just not going to talk here, and let's have a moment of silence and just listen. Yeah, so there's two of those footprints, one for each building, and this was really a tribute to nearly 3,000 people who were killed in the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, as well as 6 people who were killed in a World Trade Center bombing in 1993. So this is a very important memorial for this country. The centerpiece is this reflecting area and the pools, and then also there's this brand new shopping area and a train station that's been built. It's very beautiful. It's right next door, and that's what we're in right here. It's located to a memorial and houses a collection of artifacts. There's a museum that has all the history. It's really an emotional day. I was actually in Maryland at the time of the 9/11 attacks, about 20 miles north of the Pentagon. And I was working for the American Red Cross in Maryland, in an area called Rockville, Maryland. And I remember it very well. I was in Rockville, my wife was working in Baltimore, and we were both affected by this, and a lot of people we knew. We even knew some people who worked at the Pentagon. So it was a really important day for everyone. So here we are going back down. Now we're starting to get into the touristy part of town. This is the parts of town where it's going to be less safe. Lots more people, and this is where your surveillance and your situational awareness has to take it up a notch. You got to be ready. You got to have a plan for how you're going to keep yourself safe and secure. This was around Midtown right here and Broadway, and Madison Square Garden. This was the night of the Game 2 of the playoffs with the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks, and unfortunately the Heat did not win. We did not go to the game because the cheapest seats in the house were still more than we were willing to pay. But we had some good pizza, and we went to Broadway and saw a show, so we were able to get out and explore. This is really the kind of area similar to Bourbon Street in New Orleans and other places that are comparable. You really have to be careful, but there is some safety in numbers. There's a lot of people around. There is a heavy police presence. They obviously want people to be safe. Things can happen, but I always argue that things tend to happen where you're in an area where there's not many people. So I generally feel safe in a crowd, but I do want to be careful not to have something stolen or pickpocketed and things like that. But I'm not really worried so much about violent crime in a heavily populated area like Times Square. So I'm gonna also let you just sort of see some of the sights and sounds, and I'm gonna let you and stop talking for a moment.
Is it? That's strange.
Right on time, too.
Take one? I don't know what happened to my phone.
So there you have it. Mango's home. She's safe. She watches everything from the window here and takes it easy. She doesn't get out and about. What's the take-home message from my trip to New York City? Well, I think one, like some of the other trips I've made recently, a city is what you make of it and where you go and how you choose to plan your trip. If you're in the bad parts of town, well, it's going to have a different experience. If you're a tourist, that's another experience. It was very rainy, very miserable, but we got out and about. We went to museums on the rainy days, and on the pretty days when there was some sun and it was warmer, we went to the tourist attractions. So as we think about, our travels and reflect upon what I've talked about in this video in New York City, I just think it's important for us to always keep in mind that not everyone has the ability to go to the best part of town. Not everyone has the ability to take a cab or a Lyft or a shared ride above ground. A lot of people have to take the subway. When we were in New York, we took the subway, but we were primarily going north-south along the east side, and it was a very reasonable, pleasant experience. I found the subway system in New York to be quite comfortable, and the people on the train were mostly young people. It tend to be in the 20-something range. There's a lot of that demographic in New York. That's the people that have moved in and they're taking the jobs. Maybe some of the older folks are getting out. There were a lot of seniors, a lot of people dog walking on the streets. It was a very interesting experience from my point of view because the lifestyle was nothing like what I had heard in the news media. We go to New York not that often. There would really been no real reason to go. Probably every 10 years. I went there in the early 2000s. I went there around 2012, 2013, and now again 2023. So about every 10 years, we make our way up there for one reason or another. On Monday when we were there, and I'm just getting back, there was an incident on a train. We physically on the train when we were riding, my wife was beside me, I was here. There was a guy going person to person, looking them in the eye and saying, "I've had enough of this. You know, I'm ready to cause trouble." And he came right up to me, and and he asked me for money, and I said I don't have any. And he, he moved along down the line, but he was verbally saying things that were aggressive, and saying that he had had enough of this, and he was trying to intimidate people into giving him money. I usually don't engage with those folks, but in this particular case, I told him I have no cash, and in reality, that's true. We don't carry cash when we go around. So the guy moved along, but you have to think about what you would do in those situations. In New York, you don't have the ability to have real weapons. You can have your pepper spray, like I mentioned earlier. You don't have a lot of options for other things. They make it almost incredibly difficult to impossible to carry a firearm in New York City. And people that live there are pretty much just at the defense of their bare hands, using your mind and being smart, and then trying to deal with people in a way to de-escalate a situation, or to verbally address the situation in a way that the best way you can. I don't agree with the ability of limiting people's rights. In a big city like that, I can see also the risk of everybody's carrying around weapons, but I truly believe that the more people that are carrying self-defense tools, the more people are aware that people can stand up and help someone. We don't have to rely on the one Marine or a vigilante who can step in and help. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen as the police step back and the funding is cut. People are going to have to step up and stand up for other people. People on the subway have to step up and be prepared to help, especially the bigger, the stronger, the more trained people need to protect our women and seniors. And it's just that it just can't be more clear in this day and age, especially in that type of environment where you really don't have a lot of other options for defending yourself. And even defending yourself, there are obviously legal considerations. So people don't like to get involved. It's a bad situation when the law is not in the favor of the victim and the law is in favor of the criminal. And in New York City, for example, I think the report is there's only a couple hundred people who continue to commit all of these crimes over and over and over again. They get arrested, they get released, they're back out. It wasn't a lot of people. So it's just a revolving door, and this kind of get out of jail, or it's not helping anyone. And I just don't think that this is the right approach. You have to be tough on crime. You have to have strength in order to provide safety. The NYPD, they do an outstanding job, but there's just not enough of them. And I could see great police presence in Lower Manhattan and on certain subways. But I can imagine there are parts of town that we did not go to where it gets less and less and less, because that's just what someone sitting in an office somewhere decided was going to be a good idea. It's been shown over and over again that this is not a good idea. It does not work. Things are getting worse. They're not getting better. So I hope we can learn from this. I hope this video showed you a little tour of New York that was entertaining. It showed you some nice weapons, old weapons from the Met, and talked a little bit about crime and safety in New York. So everybody take care, be safe, and I'll see you again on the next one.